Hello, happy Sunday. Welcome to Southwell Towers. I'm here because Norwich have announced the loan signing of Ondrej Duda from Hertha Berlin on a 6-month loan deal till the end of the season. Essentially, the 25-year-old Slovakian international has joined Norwich, and I think it's probably a deal that we all anticipate is happening pretty soon, wasn't it? Given Daniel Farke's quotes and also the quotes from his agent and his dad on Saturday morning. So it's a deal that we've been expecting. It's a deal that's officially over the line. And for Norwich City, they strengthen in an area where perhaps they've needed a bit more of a contribution, given that Marco Stiepermann and Kenny McLean perhaps haven't offered what many anticipated in the Premier League, certainly the former in that statement. Marco Stiepermann just hasn't quite been able to make that step up to Premier League level, and we've seen with his performances, and then equally we saw at the FA Cup at Preston last weekend perhaps how effective he can be in the right position and on a particular stage, and Norwich City do need a bit more of a contribution, particularly in terms of their offensive output, because of what Teemu Pukki has offered this season, and they do need some more help beyond Pukki and Todd Cantwell, who are Norwich's top two goal scorers. So Duda comes in, someone who shined in the Bundesliga last season, was certainly excellent for Hertha Berlin. It was almost his emerging season in the German capital after being quite impressive in Poland and got his move to Germany. There were rumours of big clubs being interested. Liverpool, Spurs got linked to him as a youngster. He chose to go to Hertha Berlin and work with Cal Dardé, who was the head coach there. He's no longer, left last summer. I think he's still involved in their youth ranks, but he had a really good relationship with him. But Duda spent essentially the first 2 years injured. Certainly the first year, he made his competitive debut for Hertha Berlin in the Bundesliga 7 months after signing because of a knee injury that required surgery. So yeah, it's an interesting one for Norwich because it perhaps meets their box, if you like, and fits their profile of, he's 25 years of age, first and foremost, so a good age. This isn't like they're getting a 32-year-old with plenty of experience. He is perhaps a bit raw around the edges, and he is certainly geared towards a counter-attacking style of play. He can progress the ball up the pitch, likes to receive it on the half-turn and drive, and is also very effective from the set piece. But he's quite an off-the-cuff footballer, quite an enigmatic type character, but really creative and can create opportunities. I think last season his relationship with Salomon Kalou, as well as Hertha Berlin's other attacking entities, really helped him thrive and prosper. But what he is really good at is just threading the balls through the final line, the defensive line, for an attacker to run onto. And this is where I think Norwich have been quite savvy with their recruitment, because Teemu Pukki is a striker who likes to play on the shoulder of defenders and feeds off those balls in behind with little clever bits of movement, and perhaps beyond Emi Buendia, hasn't quite had the supply line, particularly through that central phase. I think quite a few of the passes have almost cut through the sides, haven't they? But in Duda, they have got someone who can play on the half turn and can feed that pass through to Teemu Pukki. And like I say, there are going to be opportunities in the second half of the season, I think, where they are going to absorb pressure and a lot more of it, and Duda can help progress the ball up the pitch and equally help them with their offensive output. And that's the idea. Any contribution they can get, particularly in games at home where they have been taking the lead and haven't quite been able to get that second killer goal to see off the game, I think is going to be pivotal. Slovakian international, of course, good player. It's going to be now Daniel Farke's task to get a tune out of him, and for Norwich City to get a tune out of him, because for me, perhaps there's slight questions about his physicality, but he was strong enough in the Bundesliga, certainly displayed that, and has got a good range of passing on him. So there's plenty to like. Maybe a little bit of pace as well, which is good. It gives Norwich a different option in that attacking three, and hopefully they can strike a tune out of him, because if they can get him in a place where he's content, and there was a quote from, I did a profile piece on pinker.com about Duda on Friday, where his former coach basically said that he's not a player who really strives off having an arm around him. He doesn't need to be kicked up the backside. He is a player who almost self-governs and understands his responsibilities by himself, which is interesting as a character. But given perhaps what Norwich need at the moment, they perhaps need players who are going to take things into their own hands and do have a little bit of swagger and a little bit of self-confidence to push them on. But as I said, a very technical footballer, very technically proficient, perhaps not a surprise given the way Norwich City like to play the game, and particularly how they like to build play up through the thirds. I think he's going to be essential in that. And if he can get 4 or 5 goals to now in the end of the season, then it's certainly going to be positive as well. Started his career in his native country of Slovakia. Got a move to Legia Warsaw in Poland, who are a big side. Then got a move to Hertha. Initially struggled with his surroundings. Of course, got that knee injury as well, which perhaps didn't help things. But struggled to maybe adapt to life in Germany. Eventually, he did. And as I said, last year he had a bet with Salomon Kalou that if he scored a certain amount of goals that he would get a Rolex watch, which he surpassed. And I think he actually donated that watch to charity, or sold the watch back to Kalou and gave the money to charity, which is quite a nice story. But as much as people will rave about him, last year was very much a one-off. He's not been able to repeat that this year. The previous 2 years he was blighted by injury ever so slightly. But what last season showed was, briefly, his capabilities and his strengths. And if Norwich can extract those and get them out again and put him in a system which allows him the ball and allows him to feed the ball through to Timu Pukki, then I think they've got an exciting talent on their hands. But equally, they're going to have to do that by having possession of the ball, because if they don't do that, then I think he has the ability to get lost in games. But of course, he is available for Bournemouth next weekend, so that could be an apt moment for him to really take his moment and shine. And as I said yesterday, my match verdict, the Premier League games and matches in the Premier League are decided upon small margins, and at the moment Norwich are overly reliant on those small margins not going in their favour. I think Duda is going to be pivotal, because if he does have a set piece, and we know how good he is from free kicks and from dead balls, if he can produce a moment of quality, that could help Norwich put a few more points on the board. And obviously it is going to be an uphill battle now, but next weekend is tough. It's going to be, obviously, in light of today's result, where they lost 3-0 to Bournemouth, Watford rather, as well. Bournemouth are going to be hungry to prove a point. They're in a free fall at the moment, and Norwich City need to cash in on that, particularly given their record against the bottom 7. And who knows, there's certainly a stage for the Slovakian to go out and prove himself to Norwich City fans, and introduce him to Norwich City fans as well. And if he can do that, then who knows, it could kickstart something really special. But we will wait and see. There we go. Hopefully a few more signings to come this window for Norwich. They certainly need them in defensive positions, but we'll see what that brings. Duda the first in the door. 6-month loan deal from Hertha Berlin. Fingers crossed that he can make a difference.